Hi guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to take tags out of your WinCC project and log them into a CSV file and put them anywhere you want on your system. We're going to be writing this script in Visual Basic. I'll go over how to write this step by step and explain everything. So even if you've done WinCC or scripting, I'm sure you're going to find a lot of tips and tricks in here that you didn't know. So let's get started. So I'm working in WinCC version 8. This should work in any version of WinCC since 7.0. And we'll create a single user project. And I'm just going to call this CSV logging example. And I will make this available to channel members on the download site. If you want to be a member, then visit my channel page for information on how to do that. I'll also put a link in the comments. And we'll just hit create. And once the project is created, I will just open Graphic Designer. We'll just make a quick test screen and then get into the scripting. So when Graphics Designer opens up, it's going to create a blank PDL, and that is the screen format for WinCC. PDL actually stands for Picture Description Language. I don't know if that's useful, a little bit of trivia. And I am going to save this as CSV log test. And I'm going to set the geometry of this to something that's reasonable. I'm on a very high definition monitor here, and I don't really want it to be that big. And before we begin writing the script, then I'll need some tags. So I will flip back over to Control Center and we'll go into Tag Management. So here in Tag Management, you can see we already have a lot of tags. Any tag that starts with an @ sign is what we call a system tag, and they are for measuring performance and debugging and things like that. And what I'll do is just create a group and just call these log tags. This is where we will put our tags that we want to log. And I'm just going to create a few. You can actually create as many as you need to for your example. Let's just put some tags of different data types. So I'll just put tank 1 level, and let's make that just an unsigned 16-bit. I'll do tank 1 temperature, and temperature is typically a floating point, so we'll make it a floating point. And let's say that we have a valve 1 open, and that's just going to be a digital binary, so we'll make that a binary. And we'll just add a couple more here. Flow meter, and we'll just say flow meter flow. Let's make that unsigned 32-bit. And I think that's good enough for our example. And we'll go back to Control Center, and we're going to do Visual Basic Script here. So what we want to do for this particular project is we are going to log the values from these tags every minute and write them to a file. And at the top of every hour, we're going to start a new file. So basically what we're going to do is we'll trigger the execution of this script once per minute and log tags, and if it's the top of the hour, then we will start a new file. So we'll create a procedure, and let's just call this log tags to CSV. So if you've ever taken a class from me, either in person or one of mine on the internet, you know I like to write my comments first. And so the purpose of this particular function, and we'll just kind of put it up here in a comment, is log tags to CSV file every minute. And then I'll just put another comment, new file every hour. And so basically every file is going to have 1 hour's worth of data taken every minute. And so let's go ahead and start putting our comments in here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to build the file name. And so we're going to name the file based on the date and time, and then we'll put some type of description in there. So we'll say WinCC log tags, and then it's going to be month, day, year, hour. So we'll build our file name based on date, hour. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to check if that file exists. And if the file exists, then we'll open the file. And if it doesn't exist, we will create it. And then next, we need to get the tag value. And then we need to write to the file in CSV format. And then we're going to close the file and I'm just going to say clean up memory. So for right now, those are the steps that we're going to do. I could go back, maybe put numbers in here. So now we've broken this down into steps and we can concentrate on one step at a time. So we're just going to jump in and start doing these step by step. So first we've got to build a file name based on the date and the hour. And let's just put an example in comments down here. Notice that the comments are in green if you're new to scripting. I want my file name to be WinCC Tag Data. And then I want the month, DD day, and that's going to be YYYY. So it's going to be 4-digit year. And then I'll put an underscore hour. So HH. And then our format's going to be CSV. And so here we're going to fill in the month, here we're going to fill in the day, here we're going to fill in the year, and then the hour. So the first question is, okay, so how do we get this information? So if you're new to scripting, there's a lot of information on the internet. You can just pop up a browser and kind of type in what you want. VBS, get current date and time. And it's going to tell you there's a now function. You call it and it just gives you a string with a time in it. And then there's also functions to get the current hour and the current month. And so we could say get current month. We find there's a month function and it takes a date. Well, we can just put now in there and it will give us the month. So now we have what we need to know. And I need to create a variable to just build this file name. The way you do that is you put the dim keyword. Notice it turns blue. That means it's a keyword. And let's just give this variable a name. I'm just going to call it file name. In VBScript, you can't just say equals and then start adding data. They either want you to do it on the next line. I don't really like doing it on the next line. So if you add a colon, and put this up there, then it will allow you to instantiate the data. So here we're going to put WinCC underscore tag data, and we put the double quote to indicate that this is a string, and then we're going to do the underscore, and now we need to start adding our data. And so in order to build a string, we're going to use the ampersand character that will concatenate data onto this string. And the first thing we want is the year, so we can use the month function. Again, you see it turns blue and is asking for a date and time, and we'll just give it now. And then we will just continue this for the others. That's going to give us the month, and then we'll do the same thing. Day, you see the IntelliSense is picking up what we're doing here. And so we've got month, day, and then we need, of course, the year function. So there's our month, day, year, and we'll do hour. And then we need to put the string .csv. We need to put the underscore here. So we're just going to do this and another ampersand. And that should give us our file name. And we can go and test this out before we go any further. We're going to save this and then just print out this file name to make sure it's right. And the way that we print it out is, I'm just going to put a comment, print out file name for testing. And the way that we print is I'm going to right click and do object list, and I'm just going to pick HMI runtime. You could also type this out. I'll put a dot, and the trace function is how you write out to a debug window. I'll do trace. I'll just put our file name equals, and then we're going to put an ampersand just like we did up here, and I can take this variable and copy it and do file name, and then I will put a period. This is just like in the old typewriter days. This is CR carriage return. This is LF line feet. And basically it just drops the cursor to the next line. So if you're printing other stuff out, it doesn't go all on one line. And then we're going to want to save this so we can test it. I'm going to save it the same name as this sub. So I'll just copy that, hit the save button, paste that in there, and hit save. So next, we're just going to go run this and make sure our file name is right. And then we're going to move on over to the next steps. So we're going to go back to our PDL, and we're going to need a couple of things here. We're going to need a button so that we can call the script. So I'll just do a button, and I will just put in here log data to file, and kind of make the font a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. And then we're going to go to the events tab. We'll go to our mouse events. I like to use release left. I'm going to right click and do VBS action. So this is where I can put in a VBS call to our function. And a window is going to come up. I'm just going to put in a comment, call our function or sub, and notice that we see our function here, the BMO, that is a basic module. If I expand that, there's our function, and you can put multiple functions in a module. So I'll put my cursor where I want that to go, and I'll just right click and do pass procedure call. I like to add a call function. You don't need that. I like it because it's kind of more readable. If you don't do that, then people think that might be some kind of variable or something. And then I'll right click and check my syntax. Everything looks okay. We'll click OK. And then I'm just going to save. Now, if you've watched some of my other videos, you may have used APDiag, and this is something that I have on my toolbar. Look in x86, and we're going to look for Siemens, WinCC, and then utools, that's user tools, and then there's APDiag. So I highly recommend you put that on your toolbar if you're writing scripts in WinCC. And so in APDiag, you're going to open the window, and that print statement is going to come up in this window. So we're just going to save this page and hit the runtime button. And we have our runtime window, and I'm just going to hit it, and it says our file name, and then here's our file name. So we've got this exactly where we want. I'll probably just add a 00 here at the end of 12 just to make that look better, and we can do that very quickly and then test it. So we'll go back to our function, and here we'll just do _00, and that's just gonna kind of make it look a little nicer. So I'm just gonna save this. If I just go to runtime and hit this button again, notice it didn't change anything. In order to see the change, we need to reload this page, and I can do that just by re-hitting the activate button, and then now you see it refresh the script. So our file name is exactly where we want it. So the next thing is we need to check and see if the file exists. And if it exists, we want to open it. And if it doesn't exist, we want to create it. Well, that means we need a path on our hard drive to test this. We're going to need to go figure out where on our hard drive we want to put it, and we need to kind of build that path. What a lot of people want to do is put it in the WinCC project directory. So if I open Control Center, you can see where my project directory is, and I can actually put a folder in this directory, and that way these log files will travel with the project. So I'm going to go to that path, and here's our CSV logging example. And these are all the folders that are in our project, and I can just create a new one and just call it CSV logs. That way we can put them in that folder. We really need this path. Now, if you just copy this path, it's going to work on your computer, but then if you move this to another computer, it's not going to work, and you're going to have to go back and change this. So what we want to do is make it dynamic. So let's go back to our VBScript, and let's add another step here. So let's just call this step 1A, get path to our WinCC project to store files. As with a lot of things in WinCC, they give you a lot of information in HMI runtime. So we just right click, object list, take HMI runtime, and then if we look at active project and put a dot, then we can get our path. This should be a link directly to our CSV logging path. And so let's just create a variable and build this path and make sure it's right. And so we can just say dim my path equals, and then we'll do HMI runtime active project path, and then we're going to add our folder. So we're going to put a slash, and then looking back at our folder, it was just CSV logs. So we'll just put CSV logs. So let's go ahead and print this out just to make sure it's correct. So I'll just copy this HMI runtime.trace. I'll pop it in here, and then I'll do my path equals and do my path. And so this should print out. Let's just go check it. I'm going to hit save here. Remember, again, it's not going to update until we refresh runtime because the page hasn't changed. That script is called from this page. I'll put my APDiag back up, and then we'll run this, and here's our path. The great thing about this is if you move this project, then this path will always be correct. And so all we have to do now is put our file name at the end of this, and we have a fully qualified path to our file, and then we can open it and create it and all that stuff. So going back to our script, I'll just get some of this stuff out of the way. I will just do a printout, and we'll put both of these together. So I'll just add trace again and just put full path to file equals and then we'll put my path and file name, and then I'll put and VBCRLF. So let's see if that works. I'll show you a way to test it. So we'll hit save. We'll go back here and run this, pull up APDiag again, and do log. So here, if I just copy this portion, of course we have not created that file yet, but I just did a right-click copy there, and I can test this just by opening a file browser, pop this in there, paste it, and I should go right to that folder, and I did. So the path is good. Now we need to create that file. So now we need to go figure out how we're going to create a file, check if it exists, and get it opened and created if it needs to be. So we're going to go back and we're going to see what Microsoft has to say about it. And we'll just say VBS open text file. And we'll get a lot of results, and you can go look at Stack Overflow or whatever. I kind of like to go right to the source, and I see immediately there's an open text file method, but that is for Visual Basic for applications. So it's a slightly different language. The next one, open text file, we can use. I'll click here, and this gives us all the information. It says, okay, there's an open text file, there's a file name, there's an IO mode, and that's, are you read only, are you write, are you appending, whether or not we should create it. Okay, that's going to save us a step, and the format. And it tells you exactly what this is. We have to create a file system object, have to give it a file name. We have that. Have to give it a mode. Ours is going to be for appending. To create it, we should probably just put true. If it does not exist, it's automatically going to create it. So that's going to save us some steps. And then there's an optional, you can make this for ASCII or Unicode. And so the cool thing is they usually give you a code example. Let's take a look here under this sub. They create the constants. For reading is 1, writing is 2, appending is 8. You could just put the 8 in there, but then somebody coming behind you doesn't know what that means. And so they just dim a couple of things, create an object, and then they just do open text file, and the third argument is true, which is going to be your creation. So that's what we want to do. So I'm just going to copy this, and we can just go paste that in and make it work for what we want, and then clean it up. So some of these steps are combined. I'm going to paste this. I can dim things anywhere in a VBScript. I like to keep everything kind of up at the top, and so I'm going to just take a moment and clean this up. So I'll put my dim statement there, and then we will take this dim statement. Now I can also just take this here. We have to have this. I'm going to cut that and I'm going to put it here. And then I need to explain something. Why do I have set here but not here? The short version is this is returning an object. It is an object that allows us to create and manage files. Here, this is just a string. And so you always use set if you're expecting an object back. You don't use set if you're expecting a value back, like a number or a string. So that's why we use set. Here we've got a file system object. And so we already have our name, and this is going to open a text file. We didn't copy over the constants. So let's go back and get those, because that's going to make our script a lot more readable. I'm just going to copy this, go back to our VBScript file, and I'll put these at the top. So constants are not variables. You cannot change their value. So I'm just going to use for appending. So I'll paste that. And we don't want to do this C test file. We'll just go ahead and do our whole file. And we need that full path. So I'm just going to copy this because that represents our entire path. And then we do want to create it, so that is our creation. And we can just write hello world to it, make sure it works. That'll tell us the whole file thing works. So notice that we don't even really have to check that the file exists, because if we just leave this at true, if it already exists, it's not going to create it. If it doesn't exist, it will create it. So we don't have to do that. And at this point, we will have the file open, and we're just kind of closing it right now. So let's go test this out and see if it does what we want. I'm going to hit save here, and then we'll go back, and I have to reload this page. I'll pull up APDiag, and I'm just going to hit clear just to kind of clear the window. And now it says we have a problem here, which of course we forgot to leave in the dim, the F. So this output window is really handy, because if you run across an error, it is going to show you exactly where that error is. So we'll come back down, and notice that we did not dim F here. We forgot to put it. And actually, I remembered not to put it because I wanted to use that error as an example. And if you believe that, you got some land to sell you. So we will do F here. And I'll just hit save. And we will reload the page here. I'll clear out the error. And I did not get an error here. So let's go back to our CSV logs. There's our CSV file. I will just right click and do open with, I'll just do WordPad. And there's our hello world. So we are now writing to a file. And since we're appending, if I hit this several times and then go back, we'll just reopen this. Then I've got several. Now notice that it's a run on line. So we don't want that. We want it to go to the next line every time we write. So let's go back to VBS. And then we just want to put and VBCRLF, that's the carriage return line feed. So we'll make sure that we save this, and we'll go back and we need to reload the page. And I'll hit this a couple of times. And when we go back, now look, my clock on my computer just went over an hour, so it automatically created the next file. And when we go and open this, you can see that we have several clicks here and they're each on each line. So we are successfully creating files when they're needed at the top of the hour, and we are writing each line. So now we need to go and maybe get the format that we want for CSV, and then we can actually go grab the tag values and put them into this file. So the next thing that we need to do is go get our tag values and write them to the file. Of course, we need to first talk about format. And the format that I want to print is I want the timestamp to be first. I want the name of the tag to be next, and then the value of the tag, and then the quality code, which tells us if we can trust the value or not, connection was good, and things like that. So I'm going to show you how to access first a single tag, and we will write that out in the correct format, get it going to the file, and then once we have that, then we'll do all the tags. And the reason I'm doing it this way is you handle multiple tags differently than you do a single tag. So I'll go over to tag management, and we'll just start with this tank level. And what we're going to do is we want to first create an object and connect it to the tag, and then we can get to the different properties. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So I'll do object list, HMI runtime, dot, and then I'll do tags. And then I'll put the name of the tag in there. I copied that just now from tag management. And when I do a dot, you see all the properties and methods for a tag. So I got comment, error description, name, quality code. I have a method called read and a method called write that allows us to read and write from the tag. And then we have timestamp and value. So that has all the stuff that we need for this. And I could just repeat the HMI runtime.tags, .value, .name, .quality code, but I don't really want to do that. What I want to do is I want to create a variable, and I'll just do it here, just dim my tag, and then I'll use the set command. And again, if you remember from earlier, that we always use the set command if we're getting an object back. So here, this HMI runtime.tags gives us a connection to this tag. And so if I do copy this and put a dot there, then I get all the same stuff. So this just kind of makes it a lot more readable. Let's just create a variable for the line that we want to write to our file. So I'll just do dim my line. And then we'll just say my line equals, and then the first thing is the timestamp. So I'll just back this up and hit it again, and we'll pick timestamp. Do ampersand, and then we want a comma between all of these, so I have to put a literal comma in strings, and the ampersand is how we concatenate or combine shorter strings to make one long string in VBS. That's called concatenation. So I'll do my tag dot, and we want the name, so we'll just put name here, and then we'll put our comma and ampersands, and then we'll do my tag dot, and I'll do value, and you're going to learn something here in a minute. So my tag dot value, and of course the comma, and then the last thing is going to be the quality code. So I'll do quality code. We're using the value, but we haven't actually read it yet. And so you could just put my tag dot read down here, but then your timestamp and everything might not be filled in by the time we get to the value. So the way that we fix this is we actually have to call my tag dot read, and I'm going to put a open parenthesis here, and there's a read type. And basically, if there's a 0, it means it's asynchronous, and if it's a 1, it's telling the data manager to read immediately. Now, this has a dubious effect on internal tags because internal tags are not connected to a PLC, but if you're reading a PLC and you want a synchronous read, then we can do that. Now, once I call read, that immediately fills in my value, and it should fill in also my quality code. So now I've done a read, we should actually have this information here. Let's try it. So I'm going to hit save. So we need to add the tags to the screen so we can manipulate the values. I'll hit tags, we'll find our tags. And I might as well just grab all of these and I'll go ahead and just drag them to the screen. I'm going to lasso these. I'm going to turn the font up so that we can read them. And then as I look at these, we can look at the properties. So that's our valve open. I'm just going to kind of move this down here. This guy is our temperature. This guy is our level. That's the one that we're looking at now. So I'm just going to kind of organize these real quick. If you're new to WinCC, this will be helpful. If you're not, you can kind of skip over this. I'm just going to put some name tags or some labels with these so we know which tags these are. So I will take a static text and just pull it out here, and then I'll just put the name here. So this is going to be tank 1 level. I'm going to copy that, and then I'll just paste that in there. So that'll allow me to make some quick levels. I'll use my arrow keys to kind of make this label here. I can also suck the properties out of this and put them in there so that the font and everything is the same size. And then I can just duplicate this, and I'll use my arrow keys to kind of move it down. I'll just go ahead and make a couple more copies, and then I'll fill in the text. So I'm just hitting Control V, Control C. And then this particular tag here, that is my tank 1 temperature. I'll copy it out of there, paste that in there. It's a little bit too big for the text, so we'll stretch all these out, and I'll just grab my valve open here, paste that in there. And then finally, we have our flow meter flow. I'll copy that, paste that in there. So we'll clean this up a little bit, and I will select all of these labels, make them the same size, justify them to the left. And then if we want to change the color property, I'll turn off my global color scheme and maybe make this kind of a different color if we want, just to kind of dress it up a little bit. So I'll change the font color there. So now the data manager is going to be able to get some values from this tag. I'm going to set my font just a little bit lower. So notice I have all of these selected. And if I want my alignment to be in the center, of course, we can just center that. So now we've got our data. I'm going to save this. And we'll go back to runtime. Notice I actually have a 45 in this tag, and I can type in here, put in a new value and hit enter, and it will change. We'll just go to run. I'll clear this out and let's see what we got. Okay, so now we've got everything. So to recap, what we've done for a single tag value is we've created a reference to a tag object, and we've read the tag, which fills in the information on the tag, and then we are just printing this out in a line. So we've got our information. Now what we need to do is kind of transpose this and get all of our tags, and then we're going to kind of have to do a loop to read through those. So let's go back and look at our file. Make sure we're good there. Yes, we do have our tag there. Now the 128, that's in decimal, and I've gone into tag management and I've turned on the value, timestamp, and quality code, and notice that it reads this as hex. So we might want to format that data as hex. So let's go back to our script, and for the quality code, you can just type hex. Notice how it turns blue. If it turns blue, that means it's a keyword, and that will basically just take this value and convert it to hex. And there's a lot of different ones. There's integer, there's string, but this ought to give us the hex version of it. I will make sure that I save this, and then we'll go kind of test it out. I will refresh runtime, put our window back up, and hit this a couple of times. Now we have the hex 80 that we want for our quality code. Now later we may dress this up and put the actual textual description that it's good, but for not right now, that's okay. So now that we've got one tag, we want to do all of them. And you could just create a tag object for all of the tags that you want. And in this case, it wouldn't be a big deal. We only have 4. But typically, I have like a couple of hundred that people want to do this with. And that is going to make the script take a really long time. It's going to eat up a lot of processor power because every time you do an HMI runtime.read, then that takes a certain amount of time, multiply that by 100, and now you've got a slow script that's slowing your other stuff down. So what we're going to do is create what we call a tag set, and we can pull all these tags in the tag set and just call read once. And no matter how many tags you have in the tag set, you're only charged 1 transaction by the data manager versus 1 transaction for each tag. And that is going to save you a lot of time and performance issues. So I'm going to show you how to create a tag set for our tags. I'll go over here and just copy these to make my job easier. I'm just going to make myself some room, and I will put file format here for our comment. And instead of doing a tag like we did here, what I want to do is we're going to get rid of this and we'll do dim my tag set, and then we are getting an object, and we will do my tag set equals, and we do HMI runtime dot tags, and if I do a dot, it creates a tag set. So a tag set is basically just an array of tags. And so the next thing I want to do is my tag set dot add, and I'm going to paste in my tags here, and then I can just kind of copy this here, just kind of shorten up the work. Okay. So now I have a tag set, and I can do my tag set dot read, and I'll just do synchronous, and that will read all of the tags. And so now let's see if we can get our information. So the way that I would get one of these tags is I'll do my tag set, and then I'm just going to copy this part right here, and I'll do my tag set, and this is saying go find in my tag set this tag and give me the timestamp. And so what I'll do is I'll just copy this portion here, and then I can just replace that. There's my value, and then I will, line's getting a little bit long here, and I'll do quality code, and then I'm going to do my hex around this whole thing. And that's a really long line, so I can put an underscore there and drop that to the next line. And so I've got hex and an open parenthesis, so I need to put a closed parenthesis. Okay, so we've added all of our tags to our tag set. We did 1 read instead of 4, and then we're just printing out the first one. So notice that I did a read just like before. And let's go save this and see if we're still good. I'll save this, go to runtime, and we'll bring up APDiag, hit the button, and it looks like we did get our information. There's our time, there's our tag name, there's our value, and there's our quality code. So we could again just repeat this line for each tag, but if you're doing a lot of tags, that's a lot of code. So what we want to do is write a for loop and go through each one of these and then just print them out to the file. So I'm going to add another index here. This is going to be for our for loop. So I'm just going to put it up here with F. It's kind of lonely, and we're going to do a for loop. And in the for loop, we're just going to build our line with each one of these. So if you don't know how to do for loops, in WinCC they give you the code templates. We could actually do a for each tag in tag set. Let's try that. I'll do for each, and let's call this for each tag in, and our tag set is a group of objects. So we could do this, and then I'm just going to go grab this line, I'll cut it, paste this in here. So basically we're saying, okay, here's a tag set that's got a bunch of tags for each tag in the tag set. So I can't leave this tank 1 level. We will just do tag.timestamp, copy that, and just replace this. This tag is going to represent each tag in here, so that's all we really have to put. So, and now it's a much shorter line, so I can just kind of bring it up here. So it should print out the timestamp, name, value, and quality code for each one in there. And then I will also just take this trace statement and put it in here just so we can check it out on our debug. And then it also should write it. So let's save this, and we'll save this screen, come back, go into AP Diag, we'll clear, and I'll just hit log data. Now, it doesn't like something we did here, so let's go take a look. I did for each tag, so I probably have to dim the tag. So instead of index, we'll do tag here. So I forgot in VBS it wants you to do this. Let's make sure that works. But let's see what we got. We will go to runtime, and we'll put our diagnostic screen up, and there you go. We got our timestamps. Now notice that we got different timestamps here. This is the timestamp of when I actually added these, because these have not changed. So if I go in and add different values here, I'll put a 1 in there, and then our flow meter flow, I'll just put a big number. And then we hit this again, you see that now the timestamp is in fact updated. I didn't give it a different level, so the tank 1 level, that's the last time it actually changed values. So I could go change the value here to something different, and then you can see that we got different values. So let's go take a look at the actual file. Notice that we've turned over a new hour. So our script is working there. Now, we did read after 2 o'clock, and so you may question, okay, well, there's 147, but this record wasn't written at 147. The tag changed value the last time at 147, and so that's why you have that timestamp. Now, we probably want to put a header up here when the file is created, so we might want to detect the top of the hour and put in that header there. So what we want to do is we only want to print the header if the file was just created, so it'll be at the top. We don't want to create it if the file already exists. So you can just do a search here, but what I found was to check if a file exists, well, we can use our FSO object, file system object, and just do file exists and then find out whether or not it exists or not. So we can just kind of use that. And what I'm going to do is create a flag. It's going to be Boolean, so I'll just put a B there and do file exists. And then I've just got some code here that I'm going to do. And we're going to check my path and file name because that's where our file is. And we just say, okay, if that exists, file exists is true. And if it does not exist, then we're going to set it to false. When we come down here to write our line, and I will put it right here. So if the file did not exist, then it was created at this point, and that prompts us to go ahead and put the header at the top. And notice we can put the whole if then else on one line if we want to. So this should allow us to write a header only when the file is created. So I am going to save this, and we'll go back and go to runtime. We already have a file, so let's just get rid of it, because if there's already a file there, then header's not going to be created. And then I'll just hit this a couple of times, and you can see it did create this. And then let's just open this with Notepad, and it did in fact put a header only on the first time. And then afterwards, file exists is true, and it does not print. Last thing that we want to do is just run this script once a minute, and that's pretty easy to do. I'm just going to copy the name of this. We'll go to our Actions tab, and we will create a new action. And these actions basically are triggered by time or by tag changes. So we want to call our function every minute. And we'll right-click and do Info Trigger, and we'll just do a timer. It'll be a cyclic timer. We'll add that. And we just want to call the function every 1 minute. And I'll just call this trigger name just logger. And so it's going to call the function once per minute. And all I have to do is just say call, put our function name, and do that, and it will call every minute. So I'll save this, and I'll just call this log tags to CSV action. And then in order to make sure that this actually works, we have to go over to our computer. This is our server. We're going to go to Startup, and we have to turn on Global Script Runtime. That will enable these logging functions to work. And I have to stop and start runtime. And what we'll do is, let's see if we left any trace statements in here. Yep, we did. So every minute I should see this print out. So all we have to do now is restart runtime, and I will turn on my window here. And as soon as we go to runtime, it runs, and the global actions will do that. If you save a global action and then run your page, it's going to call it. We're going to wait for another minute and we should see another printout. And I'll probably just speed up time for the video to see that. The minute elapsed and we got another sample, and notice that we have our zeros in our tag. Since we reset runtime, these go back to 0, so I'll just throw some data in here. Turn our valve on, flow meter flow, there we go. And so the next time that it executes, we should have data. Now, when we get our printout, you'll see that our last update, this do update, and we do get non-zeros. So as long as you've got your tags used somewhere in the project that the data manager has them, then you'll get the most recent data out of those tags, and you'll see that. So now we're logging data every minute, and that is our data logger project. Okay, so that's what I've got for you today. I hope you learned a little about scripting, writing to tags, a little bit about screen building in WinCC. If you did enjoy this, please share this with your colleagues, subscribe to this channel, and like this content. See you next time.